Well, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, when the men testament out the fourth line beginning. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the shisin, these hollowed little areas, sort of that the pipes went down to from the mizbeach, and they just kept on going further down into the earth. Misheshis and Bereshis Nivru. So these hollowed piped areas were created at the time of Sheshis and Bereshis. So Shinem Mars, based on a pasuk in Shira Shira, says Hamukei Yerechayach, that the roundness of your flanks to Mochalayim are like jewels. That's the general understanding of what the words mean. Maseyedei Omein, the work of Maseyedei Amon, the work of a great craftsman, and the great craftsman, of course, is a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So what is it referring to? Chamukei Yerechayach. So it means Chamukei here is understood as the pipes, the Yerechayach, the rounded pipes. Edo Ashisin, these are the hollowed areas. Kemo Chalaim, what does it mean Chalaim? Not necessarily jewels, like is the general understanding of the word, but rather from the lashon of Mechulalin. Shem Mechulalin b'yordin atahom. That is, they're like trenches that go all the way down to the abyss of the earth. Masei de Amon, that it's the craftsman's work. Zumaisei de Umanaso shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's the craftsman's work of a Kadosh Baruch Hu that was created from Sheshis Yimei Amaisa. So Tana debate Rabbi Yishmael. So Rabbi Yishmael supports this notion by the base medrash of Rabbi Yishmael taught Bereshis that the very first word of the Torah teaches us this. So the first word of the Torah teaches us a lot of very important things. But one of the things that it teaches us is Barashis. Tikray Bereshis. Don't read it as Bereshis in the beginning. But rather Ela Barashis, that Kadosh Baruch Hu created Shisin. He created these hollow trenches for the wine, the water poured on the top of the mizbeach to go all the way down to the abyss. So Tanya, the Brisa tells us. Rabbi Yossi Omer Shisin Mechulalim v'Yordin ad Tahom. Rabbi Yossi derives the shisin, the creation of the shisin, from a different pasuk that would indicate that he disagrees. He doesn't hold that they were created from Sheshis and Bereshis, but rather they were created at a later point in time. But he also agrees that these shisin, that these pipes go all the way down to the abyss. Shenema Shiva Nali Didi, Shiva's Dodi, because he derives it from a pasuk in Yeshayahu. That says that this is was created at the time that the Beis Hamikdash was built. He says, "I'm going to sing a song to my beloved Shiva Stodi." My beloved is a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Lekamo, regarding his vineyard. Keren Mayeli Didi, Bekeren Ben Shimon, that my beloved had a vineyard in a very choice location. Ben Shimon means a fertile location. In Eretz Yisrael is the fertile location. We're talking about the building of the Beis Hamikdash. Vayaz Keo, and he fenced it. That seems to be the literal understanding. He fenced it very securely. Vayiskaleo, and he cleared it of stones. Vayateu Sarek, and he planted it with the choice shoots. And that's the Beis Hamikdash, which is the choice shoot, the choice plant that was planted by a Kadosh Baruch Hu in his choice location in Eretz Yisrael. By Yivan Migdal Besoko, and he created a tower within it. The tower is the Mizbeach. The Gam Yaakov Yekev Chatzabo, and he also viewed a wine pit, a large vat for wine to go into in the Mizbeach itself. So what is this referring to? So this is referring to the creation of the Shisim by Teo Sarek, Beis Hamikdash, the planting of choice shoot is the Beis Hamikdash. But even Migdal B'Sofo, the tower planted within the Beis Hamikdash, Mizbeach, this is the holy altar. The Gam Yaakov Chatzah Ba'edu Shisim. These are the Shisim that were created at the time of the building of the Mizbeach in the Beis Hamikdash. So the shisin, these trenches that went all the way down to the abyss of the world were created at that point in time. So Tanya Bryce says, so either way, that both of these opinions, whether it was created Sheshis, Yimei Bereshis, whether it was created at the time of the building of the base of Mikdash. They hold that there was shisin that went all the way down. So Amar Yelazar bar Tzadok, or Yelazar bar Tzadok says, well, there was a lu katan, there was a little shaft, a little open area, haya ben kevesh the mizbeach, between the ramp and the altar. The ramp went up 32 amos. It rose to a height of 9 amos. So it would go to the top of the altar with a horn, so it went up another amma. And between the kevesh, the ramp, and the mizbeach itself, there was a teeny tiny little space so that the avarim, the limbs of the animals, could be thrown onto the mizbeach, and it wouldn't be a continuum. So it's this tiny little hole, or a tiny little shaft. Ben kevesh the mizbeach, marabo shekevesh. It was towards the western side of the kevesh. The kevesh was 16 amos wide. The achas shivim shana, once every 70 years. This didn't happen too often. It's like, question of how often do you clean your room? So once every 70 years, should work. Pirchei kahuna, especially for the children. So the children of the Kohanim figured, okay, it's time to, clean the area again. So they would go to this little area once every 70 years, and all the wine that had gone down at the holes that were on the top of the mizbeach would gather and congeal over there. So they would be Yordan Lasham, they would go down there. Malaktim Misham Yain Karash, they would collect all of the congealed wine. Shadam Ligule Debel, at that point in time, the congealed wine already looked like round cakes of pressed figs, Ligule Debela. Uvain Misor Ben Osam Bikdusha, then they would burn this congealed wine. They would burn it in a holy sanctified area, namely in the Azara. Shenamar, how did they know that it was appropriate to burn it in the Azara? Obviously, Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok was not of the opinion that there were the shisin that brought the wine all the way down to the abyss of the world, the journey to the center of the earth. He held that it just went to the floor and gathered up over there. So the wine gathered up over a 70-year period, and then was cleaned out every 70 years. How do we know that when it was cleaned out, it would be burned had needed to be burned in a sanctified area of the Azara? Shenamar Kodesh says in the Kodesh, in the holies, that's when you should perform the libations of wine and so forth. So turn the page, so just like it says that when you would pour the libations, it was Bikdusha. So when it would be burned later on, it would also have to be Bikdusha. Who says?
I'm having trouble trying to visualize where this space was. It's the space
between the kevish and the mizbeach on the floor. Yeah, that's right, on the floor, on the left side of the kevish. If you're walking up the kevish, it's on the left side. So my mashma, how does this connote that the burning also has to be b'streif? It says hasech nesach bakodesh hasech nesach. The bakodesh you have to do the pouring. How do we know you have to do the burning also of bakodesh? Amravina asik kodesh. It's gzeira shava. It says here, Ksiv Hacha Bakodesh Hasech Nesach. It says Bakodesh Aviyah Ksiv Hasam, and it says with respect to the nosar, the burning of any korban that had been left over past the time that it was allowed to be eaten. V'sarafta es hanosar ba'esh lo yachel ki kodeshu. That you can't eat it past its appointed time because it's considered to be holy. So we see that it has to be burnt. So okay. So therefore. This is what teaches us that it must be burnt at the end. We learn from the word Bakodesh that whatever you do to it has to be done in the holy place. But how do we know that it needed to be burnt? And so that we learn from the Gzeira Shava from Nosa. Keman Ozla Ha the Tanan. So who is the following the Mishnah going like? It says the Sachim Batfilam Olim Behead. Nesachim, the wine, water that you pour as libations. They are off limits in terms of me'ila. You're not allowed to appropriate them for your own individual use. That would be a violation of misappropriation, me'ila, of the sanctified items. However, yardul shisin, but once they're poured, once the libation is performed, they're poured into the shisin, into these pipes, so then there no longer is me'ila. So Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok. So this Mishnah must be going according to Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok, because if it's going to Chachamim, there's no possibility of me. I don't have to tell you not to misappropriate them because you're not going to reach them. They went down to the center of the earth. They already went down to the Tahom. So they went down to the abyss. So so you say no, it can even be going to the Chachamim because a person could stick their hand inside with the iklit and they could collect the wine, for example, while it's falling down the shisin before it goes down to the abyss. So what's being told? That don't worry, once it's already been poured into the abyss, then you won't be guilty of me'ila if you use it for your own personal use. And there's another version of this that says, well, maybe the Mishnah is going according to the Chachamim. We love Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok and not Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok. Rabbi Elazar Because according to Rabbi Elazar, that it has to be burned in a holy place. We see that according to his opinion, the libations remain holy and sanctified even after they fall down, even after they go down the pipes. So we say, no, Apilu Tema Rabbi Elazar, no, it could even be going according to Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar is of the opinion that even though you're burning it, it doesn't mean that it still has kedusha. The holiness is only on the wine and the libations at the before it's poured down. Once it's poured down, it's not holy anymore. But we just have a sever shava. When you burn it, you're supposed to burn it in a sanctified area. And both. Once the mitzvah has already been performed, then there is no violation of mi'ila anymore. So Amar Reish, yes.
I'm still confused because I thought that the shisin went all the way into the Karen of the southwestern corner.
They did. They went into the Karen and then they went down the Mizbeach. So once they went down the Mizbeach, the question is, did they continue to go into, was there a hollowed out area that kept on going down into the center of the earth? Or did it just, then land on the floor at the end? Did it, in other words, did it land on the Mizbeach was a hollowed out area? And then it went down to, the bottom of the Mizbeach. When it went down this pipe, this hole from the Karen into the bottom of the Mizbeach, so did it end up on the floor, or did it just keep on going down into the center of the earth? According to Rabbi Elazar Pasadak, it collected on the floor. Where did it collect on the floor? In the western area, the southwestern area. So therefore, it kind of oozed out into this space between the Kevish and the Mizbeach, and that's where it would collect. So Amaresh Lakish Bisman Sheminaskin Yain Al Gabe and Mizbeach. Lakish said that at the time in which they would perform the libations on the altar, Hokakin and Sashisin, they would plug up the shisin. They would plug it up so that at least for a period of time, the wine could remain within the Mizbeach area, and the Mizbeach could be satiated until they would unplug it. Like you plug up the hole, in the mikvah when the woman goes to be tovelas, for example. So they would plug it and unplug it. The kayim hashenema bakodesh hasek nesek shekar Hashem. In order to fulfill that which it says that it should be bakodesh in the holy area that the libation is performed, and therefore you make sure that the wine, at least at that moment in time, remains within the mizbech. So my mashma, why is that connoted that the wine has to remain there at that time? So I'm a papa because of sheikhar, when it says nasek nesek sheikhar means that it's intoxicating beverages, lashon shtia. It's a lashon of drinking, lashon svia, that you're satiated, lashon shikra is a lashon of that you're drunken with it. So where does the drunkenness come from? It comes from when the wine is in one's throat. So here, the throat of the mizbeach, so to speak, as opposed to its stomach, is the area within the mizbeach itself, as opposed to the hollowed out area beneath the mizbeach. Even if it goes down to the center of the earth, that would be the stomach of the mizbeach on some level. So we want the mizbeach to be able to enjoy the wine in its throat for a period of time. So I'm a papa shmamina. The Papa says we see from here that when a person is satiated. When he's drinking wine, so the place which satiates him, it's not the stomach, no, it's the throat. That's where you have to be able to savor. If you're a wine connoisseur, you savor the wine when it's kind of like in your palate, when it's in your palate, in your throat, that's when you have the most satisfying experience of the wine, when it's in that area. So Rabbi said, if you have a young Talmid Chacham, he's just becoming learned in the ways of drinking, I guess, and he doesn't have so much wine and he wants to get the full benefit of it. So what he should do is he should take big gulps, okay? Big gulps. Ligma gemui. He should, so whatever little bit of wine he has, don't drink it, slowly, drink it with big gulps. Rava, agma gemui. Rava also, when he would have his kosher baka to make kiddush, so he would make sure, in order to show the chiv of mitzvah, Rashi says how much he cherished the mitzvah, he would take big gulps to be able to enjoy it in his throat. Darish Rava, Rava Darshan, why are we bringing this drasha? Because it's the same pasuk that is the beginning of the pasuk that we were darshaning before. So the beginning of that pasuk in Shir Hashirim says, how beautiful are your steps in your sandals, your daughter, you daughter of a prince. What is this talking about? Your steps are so beautiful with your sandals, or your shoes, I should say, with your shoes. What's so beautiful about your steps? How beautiful are the steps of the Jewish people, when they take their put on their shoes and they go to the Beis Hamikdash on the Shalosh Regalim, 3 festivals. Bas Nadiv, who's this daughter of a prince? That's the daughter of Avraham Avinu. The Jewish people, the daughters of Avraham Avinu. Bito Shel Avraham Avinu Shenikra Nadiv, because he's called the Nadiv. He's associated with all the princes of the nations. They gather, to show respect for the nation of the God of Abraham. What do you mean, the God of Abraham? And he's not the God of Yitzchak and Yaakov. Why does this pasuk in Tehillim only say Elokei Avraham when it talks about the respect that is shown by the nations of the world? Elokei Avraham, it means that Avraham Avinu is the one who showed how to behave in a princely fashion. He was the first one to recognize God, the first one to convert, so to speak, to Judaism, to monotheism. Shahaya Tzachila the Gerim, he showed the way. So he's the original prince. Satana debay Rav Anan. My dixiv. So once we're on the subject of this pasuk of Chamukei Yirei that we're speaking about the rounded corners of the roundness of your flanks. That's the meaning, which we said is a reference to the shisin. So lama nimshlu divrei Torah ki yerach. So this is a reference to here he's understanding kimo chalaim, like the luchos that were made from beautiful stones. That's the beautiful jewels of the luchos. Nechamukei Yirei Chayav is a reference to the Torah that was engraved on the luchos. So why is it that the divrei Torah are compared to a yerach, to a thigh? So a thigh is kind of concealed in the body. That the thigh sort of the inner thigh is a concealed area. Just like the thigh is concealed. After V'Torah B'Seisa, so too, for Torah to be successful, it has to be transmitted in a private fashion, not like out in the marketplace. You don't hold your shear out in the shuk. Behind the Amar Rabbi Elazar, this is what Rabbi Elazar says. That we tell each person what's considered to be good behavior. So for famous pasuk in Micha, right? Ma Hashem doresh mimcha. What does Hashem ask of you? Kimasos mishpat. You should do justice, and loving kindness. So it's walk humbly with your God. Asos mishpat zehadin. To do judgment. This is considered to. This is a reference to a proper adjudication of cases. By Bezdin, Abbas Chesed means that you have to shower kindness upon each other, benevolence, and to behave, to walk humbly with God is a reference even to things that you might think are sort of public actions, and why should they be done modestly? So, because it's a reference to things about which we use the word leches, the taking out of a person when they're being buried, where you might have throngs of people accompanying that person, but it says Tova Leches El Beis Avel, and also Achnasas Kal L'Chutba, when you're celebrating a wedding, you might have throngs of people, and there as well it says Mileches El Beis Mishteh. Both of them use the word Leches, and yet we see that those things that are associated with Leches, even though they're public events, they still have to be done modestly. From here we can derive a Kal V'chomer. Things that are generally done with great public fanfare. As the Torah says, he still says that you have to do it modestly. So those things that are done, that are regularly done modestly. Alachas kama v'kama. Very important statement made here by Rashi about general, proper conduct, which is, I'll just read it. There's a V'yesh Omim on the side of the Gemara. It bears reading. If you're going to do the mitzvah of paying the money for the burial of a very poor person who can't afford it, or to pay for a kalo who can't afford it, do it quietly, do it anonymously, locate lema kame mandlo yoda to abdicate, and don't go publicizing that you did it. That's what it's talking about. When it says do it modestly, do it anonymously. The same thing is said with respect to the shiltos of Rabachai. I'm sorry. That's correct. So here, if you want a source for it, and Rashi says in the Kavachomis with respect to tzedakah, so if you give tzedakah to somebody quietly, that you should not tell people that you have done it, that you gave a tzedakah to a person who was needy. It's not something that's supposed to be publicized. That may be the source of people who are very makru when they give large sums of money. That's always anonymous. Rabbi Elazar Gadol there is a source. If you're doing it in honor of like somebody, like a relative, an ancestor, then it, might be, the kavod, their legacy might be a different story. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to publicize who gave the money. I'm Rabbi Elazar Gadol also.
We're trying to learn about the deeper Torah has to be done by us now.
Correct. Divrei Torah here is a reference to really, all matters. Okay, right. Because these are all matters of Divrei Torah, and Rashi kind of ends with that. He says, "V'hainu d'amar Rabbi Elazar." After he says, all of these different things that should be done modestly, he says, "V'hainu d'amar Rabbi Elazar d'chol mili ba'is niyusa v'hu adin Divrei Torah." And that's what Rabbi Elazar, that all matters of mitzvahs are supposed to be done in a tzenua fashion, and this also includes Divrei Torah, the way you teach Torah. Amar Rabbi Elazar gadol tzedakah yoter mikol hakabanos. Greater is the giving of tzedakah than all the kabbalah. That if you do tzedakah mishpat, that's considered choicer to a Kadosh Baruch Hu than a korban. And zevach includes all the different kabbalah. So I'm Rabbi Elazar. Gemilas chasadim is greater than tzedakah. If you do loving kindness, it's greater than giving charity. Why is loving kindness? Acts of benevolence are greater. Why? Tzedakah is like something that you plant. The kitzur lefi a chesed, but the chesed is something that you reap. Madam Zareh, if you plant, so you don't know if it's going to yield fruit or not. Safek ocha, safek eino ocha. Maybe it'll be blown away in a windstorm. Adam kotzeh, but if you're reaping the final product, then for sure, ba'adei ocha, you're going to be able to eat it. And the same thing is true with respect to gemilas chasadim. The tzedakah, the money that you give, maybe the person will buy drugs. But if you're going to do acts of benevolence, then for sure, the person is going to get something good out of it. You buy the person food and give the person food, that's a greater act. Rabbi Elazar, ain't tzedakah mishtalemes. The tzedakah is paid. The reward for the tzedakah is according to the chesed that you do it. That that you go to great lengths in order to bring the person to your house, in order to make sure that you inquire what does the person exactly need, and you give them exactly what they need. The more effort you put into the tzedakah, which is the chesed part of it, that's the greater the reward. That you're going to reap the reward according to the chesed that you put into the tzedakah. That you don't just give some flour, but you actually bake the bread. You don't just give materials to make clothing, but you actually make the clothing for the poor person. Rashi gives different examples. In three different ways, acts of loving kindness are greater than charity. Tzedakah is only with money. Acts of loving kindness are both with money and with your body. That, like, for example, you're giving a hesped for somebody, or you're carrying a pallbearer, at a funeral, or you're accompanying somebody who is a guest out of your house. That's begufo. Tzedakah is only for poor people. Gemilas chasadim, acts of loving kindness, can be given to anybody. Even rich people. Tzedakah is only given. If you're going to give some money to somebody, they have to be alive to receive it. Milas chasadim, acts of loving kindness, of bein l'chaim, bein l'mesim, are both for living people and for dead people. If you, for example, go and you help bury a person, so that's something which can be done even after death, and that's milas chasadim. Rabbi Elazar, if you do tzedakah mishpat, it's like you filled up the entire world with chesed, with loving kindness. Shnemar, tzedakah mishpat chesed Hashem. The chesed Hashem is malaris; it fills up the world. So you might say that anybody who wants to do tzedakah b'chesed, we're going to make it easy for them to do so. That it's going to be arranged that the people who really need it will come in front of them, and you won't have any bamboozlers or any charlatans who will take their money. It's not so simple. That it's something which is very valuable. It's something which is very precious to be able to do chesed. That you need the kind of the good fortune to have the appropriate people come in front of you, and not charlatans who will just take your money and your kindness, even though they don't really need it, and it's not really for a good purpose. So
being nice is the
yeah, absolutely. Nice acts. It's minus chasadim. If it translates into actions, minus chasadim is actions. So you might think the same thing is true with respect to a God-fearing person, that they're going to have the challenges, and sometimes they'll do tzedakah, but it'll turn out that it was really for some swindler, so they won't get the mitzvah. No. When it comes to those who fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu, every single chesed that they do is going to be forever. It's going to be real chesed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to see to it that their money and their kindness won't be wasted. While on the subject of kindness, So any person who has like a charm to them, so then it's clear if their face radiates charm, so that means that they are God-fearing. Shnema chesed Hashem me'olam ve'ad al yirei. It's on their God-fearing people, on their faces, on the countenance, on their countenances, you can see that that sign of benevolence and goodness. We sing in Aisha's style that she has wisdom on her lips, and that the Torah of Chesed is on her mouth. Is there some Torah that's benevolent and some Torah that's not benevolent? Torah that is learned for the sake of Torah, that's Torah which is a Torah of kindness. If it's just being learned so a person can be treated with honor, and he can get accolades. Zui Torah she'eno shel chesed. That's the Torah that's not a Torah of benevolence. It has to be sincere. Some say Torah lamda. If you're learning Torah to teach it, Zui Torah shel chesed. That's a Torah of chesed. Shlo lamda. But if you're learning Torah not to convey it to others, so that's not benevolent. That's not a benevolent Torah. Zui Torah she'eno shel chesed. We'll start the next sugya. The way that it was done on the weekday, so it was done on Shabbos, but they would fill up the flask of the Nisach HaMayim, the water before Shabbos. It says that they would fill it up with in a container that was not holy. Am I nice with the dishes? Why not fill it up in a container that is holy? Someone say, since he said Kasava ain't Shir Lamayim, this Tana of our mission is of the opinion that there was no set amount of water. There could be any amount of water that you filled up would automatically become Kaddish. So you can't say, okay, well, the first 2-3 lugin are Kaddish, so that's going to become puzzle if it's left overnight. But anything above the 3 lugin, if I fill it up with 10 lugin, I can use the other 7 lugin on Shabbos. No, because all of it, could conceivably be set aside for the Nisach HaMayim. It's 3 lugin plus. The Klisharis V'kachit Shlomidas, and even if you didn't have in mind that this holy sanctified vessel is going to cause the water to become holy, it's not going to make a difference. It's because it willy-nilly becomes holy, whether you like it or not. So therefore, b'maisim mikudeshes, if you would bring it with a sanctified vessel from the day before Shabbos, all the water is going to be in the sanctified vessel. It's automatically going to become sanctified. Anything that becomes sanctified becomes invalidated if it's left overnight. So therefore, be ifsulu belina, and we'll come to other explanations tomorrow. We'll stop here. That's right. That's right. Exactly.